Imagine the symphony that instead of the instruments are actually hormones that are all collaborating and playing the tune of your metabolism. Now imagine what happens with inflammation. This is like having a gang of thugs break their way into the concert hall, and now they're rushing the stage and they're kicking over the chairs and the music stands and the instruments. That's the same as inflammation coming into your fat. This is the setup. This is for metabolic disaster. Eating a lot of ultra-processed foods can increase your risk of diabetes, type 2 diabetes, as high as 53%. The first cause of insulin resistance is First, we're going to talk about what is insulin resistance. All right, what is it? Insulin resistance is a condition in which your body does not respond properly to the hormone insulin. Insulin is a hormone, a protein that's made by your pancreas. It's an organ in your belly. It's located on the left side of your body, okay? And insulin has an incredibly important job for your metabolism. It helps to draw in blood glucose from the food that you eat. Blood glucose is the fuel that comes from the food. So when we eat food, we're filling up our gas tank, we're adding fuel to our systems, and insulin actually helps to draw that fuel from our bloodstream because we're eating it, going to our stomach, the fuel is getting absorbed into our blood, and insulin draws it in to our muscles, stores the extra energy into our fat, and also brings some to our liver as well, all right? Absolutely critical role for healthy metabolism and give you enough energy. Now, insulin resistance occurs when your body doesn't respond in the right way to insulin, meaning you can make insulin, but guess what? Your body's not responding to it, so it's not able to, insulin's not able to draw that blood sugar in. And guess what happens at that point? Well, your body's going to make more insulin to try to compensate for it. It just thinks, insulin's not working. Let me just make some more to bring in more blood glucose. Doesn't work. So you make more insulin. Basically, it just goes up, 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 up. And guess what? The blood glucose isn't being drawn properly into your tissues and your cells, so it builds up in your blood. So when you hear about blood glucose levels rising like a tide, okay, going up, 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 that's actually what might be happening, is that you have insulin resistance, all right? So blood sugar runs high. Insulin will also start to build up because your pancreas is making more, trying to actually get some glucose in, and you're not getting enough energy into your cells. All right, you're not getting enough fuel in your cells. This is the setup, insulin resistance for metabolic disaster. Okay, and in fact, it is one of the core things that happens, core problems that happens in something called metabolic syndrome, and which will lead eventually to type 2 diabetes, right? This is kind of like a problem, a metabolic problem of epic proportions in the modern world. The first cause of insulin resistance is living a sedentary lifestyle. Sedentary actually just means sitting around, all right? And not moving. Now, we know sitting around isn't good. We used to call it in the old school days, don't be a couch potato. Most people are actually sitting all day long, even if you're, in otherwise good shape, all right? Because we got screens that we're all staring at now, right? And, but the problem of this is that even when you're like actively working on a laptop or on a phone and you're sitting down a lot, it puts you at risk for insulin resistance. If you are somebody who spends a lot of time sitting on your butt, all right, sitting down, and look, it might be it's not because you're lazy, it's because you might be working really hard. It's time to get on your feet and become physically active, all right? The sedentary lifestyle, okay, is linked to insulin resistance. We know this for a fact. If you're sitting all the time, you're at higher risk of actually developing insulin resistance. Fiber, which is found in the foods that we eat, like whole plant-based foods are packed with fiber, are really, really important for a good, healthy gut microbiome. Gut microbiome is a healthy bacteria that lives in our gut, 39 trillion of them. Most of them live in a part of our gut called the colon, right? And there's a part of the colon called the cecum. It's kind of like a baggy area of the colon, the large intestines, right where it begins. And then the colon goes up, it crosses your body, across your belly, and then goes down, then the poop chute. All right, that's basically how food gets expelled. But in the cecum, which is where the colon begins, it's like the sacky area, huge amount of gut bacteria, healthy gut bacteria live right there. They need dietary fiber to be healthy. And in fact, when you feed them dietary fiber, all right, eating an avocado, eating mushrooms, eating broccoli, all right, eating a pear. So lots of foods, delicious foods, actually have dietary fiber. But when you feed the gut bacteria dietary fiber through whole plant-based foods, you know what your gut bacteria do? They pay you back because they're happy, all right? And they release their own substances that are beneficial for health called short-chain fatty acids. And these short-chain fatty acids help to lower inflammation. They help to lower your blood cholesterol. They tend to make you more insulin sensitive, so they fight insulin resistance. And they can text message your brain and help your brain release social hormones so you're in a better mood. You got to be in a better mood to make the best possible decisions, right? So this gut bacteria thing is super, super important. And if you don't have enough fiber in your diet, you are not actually feeding your gut microbiome. Okay, so think about your gut microbiome like a pet you might have at home. You might have a dog, you might have a cat, you might have a goldfish, you might have a pet bird. What do you do as a pet owner? Well, you're just dutifully, you never forget about feeding your pet, right? And like if you have a pet dog, how does your pet dog pay you back after you feed it? It comes over and gives you a lot of love, right? So our gut bacteria, we feed it dietary fiber, and when they're happy, they pay us back, not by nuzzling us or licking our face. Our gut bacteria pays us back by releasing short-chain fatty acids, SCAFAs. We even know the names of them. There's 3 of them: acetate, butyrate, and propionate. I'm just telling you that we know this stuff, right? I'm a researcher, I'm a clinician, I'm a communicator. Like, we have to really convince people when we're talking about something that we know exactly what we're talking about. And I'm a scientist, so I do know this stuff, all right? And I can tell you that dietary fiber helps our gut bacteria make those short-chain fatty acids that lower inflammation and counter insulin resistance. So if you want to actually get back to a healthier insulin-sensitive state, you got to eat some dietary fiber, foods with dietary fiber. What are some of the high fiber foods that I think taste great? Lentils, all right? Sunflower seeds, that's a snack. Oatmeal, that's a breakfast. Beans, that's a dinner that if you make enough of, you'll have some leftovers for the next day for lunch. Avocado, spread it on toast, just enjoy eating it, cut it into a salad, great source of dietary fiber. Broccoli, raspberries, Brussels sprouts, corn, popcorn, even a good source of dietary fiber. Barley, another good source of dietary fiber. So I just listed some of the really high fiber foods. Ultra-processed foods, eating it, bad for overall health. So many reasons. Bad for brain health, bad for cardiovascular disease, bad for gut health. There's many, many reasons why. But it all comes down to the fact that these ultra-processed foods take, normal whole foods, stick them in a factory, and grinds them and processes them and puts them into a form that doesn't exist in nature. And then there's a bunch of additives that are included, thrown into the mix. This is preservatives, artificial preservatives, and then flavoring, artificial flavorings, and coloring. Most things, after a while, their color isn't so brilliant. So anything that's really atomic colored, or kaleidoscopic colored, like really bright, highlighter colored, probably artificial coloring, all right? And then sometimes there's artificial sweeteners in there as well. And we know all of these things can be damaging to your gut microbiome, your healthy bacteria that helps your body fight insulin resistance. So good gut health is absolutely critical. And you can't have good gut health if you're actually eating a lot of ultra-processed foods, all right? So this is something that you just need to be aware of. Ultra-processed foods also is connected to building up too much excess visceral fat, the kind you definitely don't want to actually have too much of, like we talked about before. So cut down or cut out your ultra-processed foods. So how do we know all this makes a difference? Well, researchers have actually looked at this. Now, one study out of Canada showed that people who are eating a high level of ultra-processed foods, you know what? They had a 37% increased risk of developing type 2 diabetes. that goes hand in hand with insulin resistance. And another study from the United Kingdom showed that for every 10% increase that you eat junk food, ultra-processed food, there was a 12% increase in developing the risk of developing diabetes. All right. For every 10% more ultra-processed food you eat, you have a 12% increase in developing type 2 diabetes. And there's another study from Spain that basically looked at the high consumption of ultra-processed foods and found in this particular study that eating a lot of ultra-processed foods can increase your risk of diabetes, type 2 diabetes, as high as 53% compared to people who are not eating a lot of ultra-processed junk food. So the data is very, very convincing about this ultra-processed food things. Your body contains two major types of fat. There's white fat and there's brown fat. Now, white fat and brown fat are both good types of fats. Brown fats is always good. All right, I'm going to tell you why. But white fat actually, gives your body sculpture. It shapes your body. It's a cushion, keeps you warm. That white fat also produces adiponectin and those other hormones, really, really important, and helps to regulate your appetite. So here's what it is. White fat is good fat normally until you have too much of it. Now, remember I told you that expanding waist size is one of the signs of metabolic syndrome, all right, pre-diabetes, all right, and that's usually accompanying insulin problems in insulin sensitivity, all right, insulin resistance. And by the way, how does this happen? Well, you're stretching out the tube. There's more fat becomes inflamed when there's too much fat, visceral fat specifically, and then adiponectin gets derailed, and adiponectin works with insulin to be able to have that sensitivity so you can actually draw on blood glucose. So when you have too much excess visceral fat, one of the things you're going to suffer from is insulin resistance, all right? Now, that's white fat. Brown fat is different. It's not wiggly jiggly or lumpy bumpy like white fat is. In fact, brown fat is not even under the skin. It's actually close to the bone. It's around your neck. It sits on top of the muscles. It's a little bit under your breastbone. It's between your shoulder blades. And this brown fat is a very, very special type of fat because it can actually fire up like a space heater or like the top of your gas range in your kitchen on your stovetop. All right, it can fire up, generate heat. That's a process called thermogenesis. And by firing it up, it's got to get energy from someplace. So what does it do? It steals the energy from your excess white fat. So brown fat will burn down white fat when it's turned on. And you can turn it on in different ways with cold temperature, like that cold plunge thing. Those actually work. Brown fat actually also can be fired up by your gut microbiome. And there's all kinds of foods that can fire up your brown fat. When your brown fat is fired up, all right, think about that gas range. Click, 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 whoosh, you get the flame. It's drawing the fuel someplace to maintain the flame. The flame in fat is called thermogenesis. Brown fat does it. And it draws the fuel from your visceral white fat. So brown fat is good fat to burn down white fat, which can be bad fat when there's too much of it. That is a key thing. So if you've got too much visceral fat that can be causing insulin resistance, well, then you want to trigger your brown fat.